under lock and key by Hollande's team before today's press conference, and then later it's going to be released in 15 million copies of a little booklet that they're going to be distributing around France to try and convince people to vote Hollande. But really, there's nothing in what they've published today that hasn't already been suggested by the Socialist Party or that Hollande hasn't mentioned at previous talks and things like that. But the big principle, the big concept, if you like, is equality and trying to make the incomes of France fairer for everyone. That's higher taxes on the wealthy, cutting out tax loopholes, separating retail and investment banking. It's penalising companies that hire people on short-term contracts and as a result increase the unemployment rate in the long run. They're going to be made to pay a higher tax rate. It's there also be like tax bonuses for companies who produce in France rather than sending their production abroad, which of course we've been talking about a lot in the run-up to this election. All the candidates have been saying they want to encourage companies to make things in France. Hollande also saying he's going to create jobs, at least 150,000 for underprivileged young people, and extra money for education and training for those people who've dropped out of the education system. He's going to build more social housing, he says, and also cut the income of the president himself and his ministers by 30%. So the cabinet themselves will take an austerity measure in Hollande's plans.
Now, a lot of his rhetoric focusing on equality and laying the blame squarely on bankers. The other day he said his main rival is the banking sector, the finance sector. A lot of that is remarkably similar to Obama's State of the Union address yesterday.
Yes, a lot of the newspapers have seized on the similarities. Of course, France and America both gearing up for a big presidential election, and it looks like the main ideological ground that they'll be fought on, the papers say, might be more or less the same. It's this issue of income inequality and banker bashing, if you like. Now, for Le Figaro, of course, that's fiscal populism. That's what they call it in their editorial. They attack both Barack Obama and François Hollande for not seeing the real problem. They say while this kind of rhetoric might help them win elections, especially when, like Barack Obama, they'll be going up against a very fiscally conservative Republican opponent. But while this talk about taxing the rich more might play well with voters, it won't sort out the underlying economic problems that both America and France have. What Le Figaro wants is to hear both of them talk a bit more about cutting the debt and, of course, more austerity measures. But for Libération, the left-leaning paper, they're both moving in the right direction. They've got Obama launching his campaign there on that front page, which is a cartoon special, today's issue, because France's famous cartoon festival in Angoulême launches today, so Libération have cartoons to illustrate every story. So there's Obama taking off in a spaceship, cartoon Obama, launching his plans. They talk in their editorial about creating a united joint front against austerity that could spread from Paris to Washington, and about how both Hollande and Obama could learn from one another and be good partners. Le Monde, though, thinks, and at least in their cartoon, that the similarity might have gone a little bit far. We've got President Obama there saying, "I illegally downloaded Hollande's manifesto online and have inspired myself with it." So they think they might have gone a bit far.
And some of the papers find that he hasn't gone far enough in his attack on austerity policy.
No, well, there's always people who would like it to go further. The communist paper L'Humanité is campaigning for the left-wing candidate Jean-Luc Mélenchon. What's interesting about their reporting today is that they've done a poll which says 31% of the French still haven't decided who to vote for, and they don't feel represented by any of the candidates.
And what are they making of Alassane Ouattara's visit to Paris?
Well, Libération is having a look at the relationship between Sarkozy and Ouattara. They say that for Nicolas Sarkozy, this foreign policy, liberal interventionist foreign policy, both in Libya and in Ivory Coast, sending French troops, is one of the main achievements of his presidency that he hopes to be able to vaunt in the election. And also the idea of having built a new relationship with France's former colonies, which in the past, of course, was known as France-Afrique and very much associated with corruption. Now, he says, he's been good friends with Ouattara for 20 years. He was advising him every day on the phone during the Ivory Coast's political crisis, and he hopes he can now sell to the world and to the French people that he's created a much more equal relationship with France's former colonies.
OK, thanks very much for that look at the French papers, Elena. You're watching Live from Paris. Coming up after the break, Focus, and today we head to Ukraine.